Hey there, lovelies. Welcome to the Holy Shed, and thank you so much for your time today, which I will try not to waste. But first things first, I want to begin by saying a big happy birthday to my gorgeous wife, Pat, who's actually allowing me, in her grace, to film this today. Our birthdays, as it goes, are just a day apart. So, we share them. We have more of a birthday season, really. And this is us yesterday enjoying lunch together in a railway carriage. Yeah, a lovely railway carriage. Static, of course, in a little place called Lopen in Somerset. Now, next weekend, me and Pat will be at Greenbelt Festival, as indeed I know will some of you, and I hope to bump into you amid the magnificent madness that is Greenbelt. And incidentally, I should just say, I'm not sure that I'll be able to put out a Holy Shed next weekend. I'll have to see how things go, but either way, I will put up a post to let you know. So, anyway, next Sunday afternoon, I will be giving a talk in the shelter venue at Greenbelt on the subject OMG, Finding Hope in a World Falling Apart. This is a picture of the Greenbelt app, by the way, which is well worth getting if you're going to be there. It's got everything you need. And, I'm so pleased that this is happening because I didn't think that it would until about a month ago. Anyway, if you're at the festival on Sunday, do please come and join me. It's at 2 p.m. in Shelter. And since I'm in the midst of, thinking and preparing for what I want to say at Greenbelt, I thought I'd just bounce around some of the things going through my brain, which may or may not make it into the Greenbelt talk. Who knows? It may just turn out to be a way of getting me into the right headspace. But you may have noticed that I begin the blurb for Greenbelt with the opening line of Nick Cave's fabulous song, Into My Arms. Now, if you're familiar with it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I can't think of another line in any song by a rock artist, any song that begins actually with a line which is so directly and explicitly theological. I don't believe in an interventionist God. I mean, who starts a love song like that? But while the statement sounds, categorical, Nick Cave doesn't really do categorical. Ambiguity and paradox are more his territory. And his next line says, but if I did, I would kneel down before him, blah, blah, blah. And the ambiguity continues in the next verse where he says, I don't believe in the existence of angels. But if I did, I would summon them together. So the song continues in this vein. But for me, the real nub of the song lies in a much less ambiguous line where he says, but I believe in love. And it's great. It's kind of almost like a change of tone in the way in which the song is coming across. You've got this sort of wrestling with this sort of ambiguous statement, all born out of his love for whoever it was. And then there's a kind of calm, and he looks directly at the camera and says, but I believe in love. So I don't believe in an interventionist God, but I believe in love. I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at. I don't believe in an all-powerful, controlling, omnipotent God randomly intervening in the world according to some puzzling logic. But I do believe in a God whose power is the power of love. And it's interesting, we're never told God is power, we're told God is love. But of course, love is its own kind of power. Not the kind of power that explodes a rock like dynamite, no, more the kind of power that defiantly grows through concrete like some plants do. So here's the question. Why have Christians become so fixated on omnipotence, a concept of power that derives from Greek philosophy, not scripture? An assertive, controlling, top-down, masculine kind of power, instead of power rooted in love, which is persuasive, which is collaborative, which is empowering. The now deceased German feminist theologian Dorothy Zoll, who you'll be hearing more about in the Holy Shed, I can promise, makes the wonderful point that the entire narrative of Jesus of Nazareth is shaped by a renunciation of and a resistance to top-down power. Let me give you a quote. She writes this. She says, "The Christian assumption that we recognize God most clearly in the figure of someone tortured to death goes completely against our fixation on power and dominion. Christ appears in the Gospels as the man for others, has nothing but his love, no weapons, no magical tricks, no privileges." It's a false Christology, she says, to imagine Christ as a Greek god, a figure who can do anything and who has a return ticket to heaven. That's really a denial of the incarnation. For those who mock Christ, like the soldiers at the cross, God was identical with power and rule, but the only capital with which he came into the world was his love, and it was as powerless and as powerful as love is. He had nothing but his love to win our heart. God, she says, is not the extension of our false wishes, nor the projection of our imperialisms. That's a really powerful final statement. And in the light of Auschwitz, and Zoll grew up under the shadow of the Holocaust in Auschwitz, she says, in the light of Auschwitz, the omnipotence of God is a heresy, a misunderstanding of what God means, which really takes us right back to the age-old dilemma. If God is all good and all loving and all powerful, why is there evil? Why suffering in the world? An all powerful, all loving God would surely intervene at Auschwitz, Gaza, Sudan, all the other horrendous situations of pain and suffering in the world. I mean, surely. And the fact is, this, belief, the belief in this kind of omnipotence, divine omnipotence, is an absolute open goal for critics of Christianity. It makes no sense. There are lots of arguments. There are lots of arguments used by Christians to explain away the dilemma. In fact, there's a whole field of theology devoted to it called theodicy. It's a branch of apologetics that aims at defending the goodness and omnipotence of God in the face of, all the pain and suffering in the world. It's an area of theology that fascinates me. I've studied it. I've got umpteen books about it. But I have to say that all too often it ends up sounding for me like trying to square a circle. And in the process, as I say, it sets up a very easy target for, people like militant atheist critics. It's also a good reason, I think, for many fair-minded people to become atheists. If I still believed in and held on to that kind of notion of omnipotence, I think that I'd probably join them too. Now, look, I won't lie. There are many situations in the world that could make me long for a zapping kind of God. There are people I would personally zap if I could. But then I can't say that I much like that zapping God part of me. It's not something I feel proud of or that I want to hold on to. And the fact is, regardless of our theology, it just doesn't happen. God doesn't show up in the world like that. Shows no inclination to do so over centuries and centuries and centuries of pain and suffering and horrendous things in the world. I mean, what I can't understand is why people who cling tenaciously to this omnipotent God seem unable to face honestly the difficulties that it presents. It's almost like a comfort blanket of some sort that they're clinging on to. Um, I just don't see why it it is something that they cling on to when it has so many difficulties, and why they seem unable to face up to those difficulties. I mean, at the coal face of pastoral ministry, the problem is very, very clear. Like, I remember walking into the flat of Jason and Linda just off the Holloway Road in North London, feeling overwhelmed by their loss. Lovely couple. They tried and tried for their first child. And then the baby died after just 3 days in an incubator. We didn't even sit down, we just stood there in the kitchen, fighting back tears, all three of us. Linda said, "I'm not very religious, Dave. I want you to take the funeral because I think you're a kind man, but please don't ask me to believe that this is God's will or that there's some hidden purpose or good in all of this." "I can't see any purpose in it at all," I replied. "It's a mess. And I won't ask you to believe anything that I don't believe myself." Well, I can tell you, folks, carrying a shoebox of a coffin into a crematorium is about as awful a thing as anything. I've done it several times and I hate it. And a few days after the funeral, we were in the kitchen again, sitting down this time, tears all dried up, replaced with steely rage. "My aunt, who is religious, told me that God moves in mysterious ways," Linda said. And I told her, "Fuck your stupid God." It was a startling statement, said with passion. And we just sat in silence for a while. And then she apologised and said, "Do you think I'm awful, Dave?" "I think you're very hurt," I said. "I'm sure your aunt meant well, but she's wrong. If I were you, I'd probably be shouting and cursing and kicking everything in the room. And if I believed in a God who hangs around making mysterious decisions about whether little babies live or die, I'd probably be out burning churches and kicking priests. But then I don't believe in that kind of God. So the churches are safe and the priests can sit comfortably. I don't believe in an interventionist God, not in any conventional fashion anyway. Not least because, as I've said several times, it makes no sense. But I do believe in the power of love, the love that held Linda and Jason together when they passed through their particular hell, the love and hope that finally enabled them to try again, the love I saw demonstrated in their faces and in their motions as they handed me eventually a little one to baptize at the font. I think intervention is entirely the wrong word. It's the language of an external hierarchical God out there somewhere, instead of the God who inhabits every atom of creation, who is present in every human experience, who inhabits the pain and suffering of the world as well as its joys, who can hold life's ambiguities as nobody else can. Instead, I believe in an interactional God, a relational God whose power is the power of love, who invites us to be part of that love at work in the world through silent presence, which is all I can bring often to people like Linda and Jason. Love at work in the world through defiant actions, through words of solidarity, and yes, through prayer. At one time, the cosmos was imagined as a three-tier hierarchical structure with the heavens above and hell or the realm of the dead below, and earth perched somewhere in between. In that world, God was a distant figure in the heavens, ruling over everything, controlling and determining what would happen on earth. But that world, that cosmology, has now long disappeared, though you wouldn't believe it in some parts of Christendom. Nowadays, instead, we understand that the world, the entire universe, is like a vast web of interconnections. Science speaks of quantum entanglement, how everything is tied with everything else. And what happens over here affects what happens over there, which, by the way, explains how we're screwing up the environment and the climate. You can't do things over here without them having a consequence over there. And in this world of quantum entanglement, I personally envisage God as the life-giving energy within all things, the presence holding everything together in love. God isn't like a ruler dishing out his will, a blessing here, a cancer there, a war over here, but rather God is the heart and soul of creation, guiding and alluring the world toward the fullness and completeness of all that it might be. And we can be part of that, aligning ourselves with the divine purpose, uniting our thoughts, words, actions and prayers with the powerful purpose of God's love in the world. Isn't that precisely what the Liverpudlian imam is doing in the video that we looked at last week? Isn't it what ordinary folk were doing when they helped clear up after the rioting thugs a couple of weeks ago? Isn't it what people do every single day when they choose kindness over isolation and animosity? They are aligning themselves with the energy field of love in the world, which we call God. And we can be part of this, part of the divine intention for the world, not in some token way, in a patronizing way, you're part of it too. No, but in real and substantial ways, because, friends, we have agency. That's what quantum entanglement is all about, that we have agency or power, that we can choose or not to unite or align with the agency of God in creation. The Franciscan sister and theologian Ilia Delio, wonderful, wonderful woman, wonderful theologian who specializes in issues of science and faith, she says just this. She says, intercessory prayer is really an expression of quantum entanglement. People often ask me, she says, do my prayers for someone or something really make a difference? And I'm like, yes, they do. And that's substantiated, not just by a faith commitment, but by what we're understanding about science and the very nature of the cosmos. But it's not in the old sense of a God up there handing down decrees. It's about entanglement and the flow of divine energy in and through this web of entanglement. I don't know about you, but I find all of this very exciting. I'm going to have to stop now, but we will pick, because Pat's got a birthday for us to get on with, but we will pick up the subject again. And the bottom line is that we all have agency. Our lives matter. Our actions, words, and prayers matter. We are part of the vast and glorious web of life, part of the cosmic community, which has God as its very centre. You remember I told Linda and Jason that the situation with the death of their child was a mess. It was. And all of these situations, Gaza right now is a mess. You know, there's so much mess out there. But the fact is, you know, that mess that Linda and Jason were caught up in was a mess that God was a part of, was present in. And I had the wonderful opportunity to be part of it too, to bring my agency in alignment with the agency of God. And so I leave you with a fabulous quote by Dorothy Zoll, which is this. She says, to pray is to revolt. The one who prays is not saying that's the way it is and that's that. The one who prays is saying that's the way it is, but it shouldn't be that way. And friends, we have agency. We can make a difference. So let's go do it. Amen. Now, here's a prayer. It's from a certain book that you know all about now. It's called Hello Darkness, My Old Friend. God of gleaming bolts out of the blue, great epiphanies that transform the landscape of imagination. God of modest light bulb moments, flashes of inspiration that bring timely vision or direction. God of slow-burning candles, unpretentious illuminations, faithfully holding out the way. God of deep and dazzling darkness, radiant presence in gloomy nights of the soul, where all is clear, but none can see. Help us to comprehend that darkness is but the womb time of light, not to be feared, but welcomed as a friend. Sacred assurance of that which is to come. Amen. Okay, well, if you have a drink handy, I'd just like to propose a simple toast. Because that simple toast that I often present summarizes all that I've been saying today. It's simply a toast to life. So if you've got a drink, join me. To life. L'chaim. And there it is. I'm off to do a bit more birthdaying with my beloved. So thanks for being with me. If you like this, if you like what I'm doing here in the shed, you can support us. You can buy us a coffee. You just have to follow the link which is on your screen now. And we are very, very grateful to all of you who do this and who support us in so many wonderful ways. Thank you. And have a great week. Remember, out there, you have agency. And kindness is love in action. Kindness is God at work in the world. Wherever there is kindness, there is God. And you have the power to do that, to throw yourself into this great web of entanglement, which is reality. And know that your contribution makes a difference as it aligns with the great will and purpose of God's love in the world. So stay human. I'll see you very soon.